Hello and welcome back to Walk to Cinema Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Saturday Night Fever, starring John Travolta.
Yeah, so Saturday Night Fever, it was a movie that I've seen around a lot. I've never actually seen it before.
I hadn't seen it either.
And I always got the impression that it was more lighthearted than it actually is.
I think because we're fans of Grease.
Right.
And his role is similar in a way, where he's a young kid, like a teenager, that likes music, likes dancing, and is kind of in a gang.
Right.
Which is very similar to Grease. But the movie itself is not similar at all.
No, not even.
The tone is opposite. Like, Grease is juvenile and fun, and this is heavier.
Yeah.
It's kind of about class struggle. It's about a kid that wants to break out of his routine and be more than what he is and achieve something that he doesn't think is possible for someone coming from where he's coming from. So in that sense, it's a poignant story. It's a more personal story that we can relate to closer than, a greaser in the 1950s that is struggling with his girlfriend.
Yeah, it's very much of its time, too, where it came out, I think, in the late 70s.
If there's a movie that you can point out as being 70s, this is it. And I think the 70s were somewhat shaped by it. Disco music was influenced by this. This helped popularize it to some extent.
Well, I've seen some people that go back and forth on whether or not this actually is attributable to the success of
I
disco
think it
music.
Definitely is.
But because I think that at least one account of a disco historian, which sounds like a cool job.
Yeah, that sounds like a great job.
Criticized at least the attribution of this movie to disco because, according to this historian, disco was popular with people of color and women and the gay and lesbian communities.
Yeah.
And so this movie might have made it more popular and attainable and accessible to straight white men. But they said that it was popular, it just wasn't for the group that this particular movie has it for.
Well, the thing is, when it becomes popular for straight white men, then it's in the pop culture. It's like the forefront. Because straight white men own the radio stations. They own the TV stations. They own the movie studios. So when straight white men like something, that's when it truly becomes the forefront of culture.
Mm.
Even if, of course, culture doesn't start from one group, and it was already popular with other groups. Those groups, especially at the time, didn't have the power to show it to the world.
Mm.
And I think this movie showed it to the world. It definitely didn't invent disco. It didn't invent any of this, right? It's not new. And I'm sure some groups were upset that now it's for white kids instead of the people that started it. But that's a different debate. This definitely started the collaborations between music studios and movie studios that didn't really exist in the way that this did it, where they have a whole Bee Gees album in this.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a surprise success that other studios were like now paying attention to. The possibility of licensing so much music from one group to make a movie. And the music in this is great. I think it's the highlight, really.
I mean, yeah, I think that it's become so popular that it's kind of like, I don't know, it's iconic, but I think, and I don't know if Staying Alive, that's the one that I think of when I think of the Bee Gees.
Mm-hmm.
If it was popularized before this movie or if it's so popular because of this movie, I really don't know the answer to that. But either way, I love Staying Alive. It's probably one of my favorite songs just in general. Not even just for the time. I think in general, it's just there's something about it where it just makes you feel groovy, you know?
It's a great song, and the dance routine they have in the film with it is so iconic that I haven't seen this, but I grew up knowing the combination of the two. I hear the song, my hands start pointing up and down.
Yeah.
So, it is an impactful film. It didn't invent disco, but it did kind of engrave this particular move. And there's a lot of dance scenes, which is another aspect that a lot of people love. Mm-hmm. I could take it or leave it. I don't like dancing in particular.
Well, I feel like this movie was a much different experience than I had originally thought. Oh, you look at the poster and you kind of read the synopsis and stuff, and you're kind of like, oh, and you know John Travolta from his previous role of Grease. You kind of think that this is either going to be a musical or, you know, at least music-centric, where it's kind of carefree and a good time.
It's anything but carefree.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of care. There's a lot of care, and I think that this may not be the best movie, which we'll kind of get into, but I think that it goes deeper than what you originally think, because you have this main character, Tony, who is John Travolta, and he is in a dead-end job at a paint store. His parents think he's pretty much a failure compared to literally everyone else, even though they seemingly are failures in their own lives too.
Especially his brother, because his brother is everything that those parents would want him to be.
Yeah, pious, and you know he's going to be a priest and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that turns out to be all fake, and it is because of the parents that this brother is living an unhappy life, where he made a choice to please them, and not something he truly wants to do.
Yeah. And then you meet Tony has his friends that are all seemingly, I mean, they're all childish. They have no responsibility or accountability or anything like that.
Yeah, they're teenagers. They think they rule the world, even though they literally haven't done anything besides, you know, being pretty racist and dancing and spending their money at the club on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And they think that makes them great. It makes them above other people around them because they're popular in the dance club, especially Tony.
Tony, they refer to him as the king.
Right, and they treat him as the king. Like, women are throwing themselves at him.
Yeah, he's got, like, his dance card filled up and stuff. But, essentially, we get introduced to other characters, such as Annette, who is Tony's... I mean, they're not dating. I think that she has an infatuation with him.
Yeah, he doesn't care for her. He doesn't find her attractive.
No, but he'll like use her, you know.
Yeah,
kind of in that sense. But you kind of get the sense that that's just how life works in this society that they live in. I guess because all of them do it. You know, they use the car as like the sex car, where they take turns bringing back different women to have sex with them in the car.
Which that's gonna come up about in the ending.
Yeah.
Which leaves a bad taste in my mouth, but I guess we'll get to that later.
Yeah. And, you know, there's supposed to be a dance competition at the club that they go to, and Tony originally is gonna dance with Annette, but then he meets Stephanie, who is slightly older. She's a better dancer. Comparatively, I guess. She's like
classy.
She's more classy. She has bigger aspirations, I guess. Yeah,
she's a secretary. She goes to college. She's just living a lifestyle that would be considered a lot nicer, right? Than working at a paint store and saving up your money to buy a shirt and spending it at the club on Saturday.
Yeah,
but that is the culture, especially at that age, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're living for. You're getting through the week to make it to Saturday. And I understand the struggle of that. And I think that's the better part of the movie for me. Is the daily struggle. He struggles with his family, he struggles with work, he struggles with his friends, and there's this other gang. I don't know if they're a gang, really. The Barracudas.
Yeah, the Barracudas.
That they get involved with. And then they come to Saturday, and that's a whole different day.
Yeah.
Nothing can go wrong that day. And I understand that. And it's still, to some sense, there's people that do it. I've worked with plenty of people that are just waiting. Now it's a Friday night to go clubbing, go drinking, and they hate their job, but they're excited to spend the money that they made on their job. So that's kind of timeless.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that are not timeless.
Yeah, I definitely think that this movie is a product of its times, whether you want to use that as an excuse for the quote-unquote bad things that happen in it. I think that it still gives you a good understanding of how life was then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether you like it or not, that's kind of how life was.
If you're a young New Yorkan, I mean, I guess if you're a Italian-American New Yorkan, this is your life.
Yeah. And, you know, as the movie progresses, he hangs out more with Stephanie. They practice for the dance competition. And Tony kind of becomes disillusioned with his life. He starts to really become genuinely dissatisfied. Because at the beginning, I mean, I wouldn't say that he's necessarily dissatisfied with life. I mean, he likes his job okay. He's getting a raise, yada blada. But, like, you know, as we progress, you know, he starts to look at his friends and see that he doesn't really want to be like them or even be, like, necessarily associated with them. And there's multiple parts in the movie where you kind of see these little hesitations, I guess, with the life that he's living. But for one, you know, the big one is that one of their buddies gets beat up by a gang after walking home from getting groceries or something. And that friend tells them that it was the Barracudas, the Puerto Rican gang. And so, you know, they end up going to the gang members and causing some ruckus. They get beat up. They beat them up, yada blada. They go back to their friend in the hospital and say that they fought those guys for him. And then that guy's like, well, I only said that it was probably them, not that it was them. It could have not been them. And it's like they risked their lives for this guy that wasn't even sure that the people he claimed beat him up, you know?
Yeah. It's a very West Side Story.
Yeah. It is a little bit.
I don't know. I like that it's not a feel-good story all the way through. But then by the end, they want a feel-good ending, which I freaking hate.
Yeah,
because I like the grittiness of it. I like that it's not easy for him. Right? I like that it's not just like a romanticizing where, like, oh, he gets away from it with dancing.
Yeah.
He kind of gets away from it with dancing, but he always comes back to it. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah, I think you would have to go with two possible different endings with this, more so than the one that they had. So to kind of get us to where we ended up, we have the dance competition that happens.
Right.
They end up...
He knows that he's not the best,
yeah,
but he wins.
Because he thinks it's because of, you know, racial bias and whatnot.
Yeah. He thinks because the best couple was Puerto Rican, the club people wouldn't give it to them, even though they deserved it.
Yeah. And so, you know, he gives the money away to them, and Stephanie kind of says that she only was using him to win the competition.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere for me.
I mean, I think it was just like she was angry.
I know, but it felt like it wasn't something she would do.
Right.
And then he was like, oh yeah, then I'll rape you.
He tried to, like, take advantage of her.
Which gets cut short, right? He just kind of, like, tries to put his hand on her pants and she pushes him off and runs away. It's still very aggressive and not necessarily good.
Yeah, and to me it feels like that is a little bit, like, it's weird on both of their character ends, because I don't really feel like we've gotten that kind of vibe from Tony's character up until that point.
Right.
And I don't know, it felt weird to me, and I guess it's his final moment of despair.
And I think that's why it makes more sense on his end than hers, because I feel like her character is not that at all. And his is not that, but he's like, oh, you used me, then I'll use you.
Yeah.
You wanted me for dance, I wanted you for sex. Whatever. That gets cut short, thank goodness, because there's no point in it.
But then the other one doesn't get cut short with Annette. So Annette is, she ends up getting really drunk, taking drugs at the dance party in order to do what she's about to do, which is she alludes to the fact that she wants to have sex with multiple of his friends.
All of them.
Yeah, she wants to just be kind of passed around, and she's drunk at this point. So the first guy does it, and she's, enthusiastic, I guess, about it. She's into okay
it at the point.
But then the next person comes, and she's not, and she asks to stop, but that does not happen. And I don't know. I think that at this one, it feels a little victim blamey. I don't know.
Right. They rape her.
They do.
Period. Like, that happens. But then it's like, well, you asked for it. You wanted it.
Yeah.
You can't turn back now. Which is not how it works.
Yeah.
You can definitely turn back.
But I think that they're, in this scenario, they're like, you put yourself in this situation. You got drunk and did drugs in order to specifically have this outcome, and then you changed your mind. And I think that obviously that's fine to change your mind, and you should not be,
right. I think fans of the movie will say it's of its time. This is how it happened in a lot of movies. This is just the mentality of society at the time, and women empowerment was still a struggle. But I mean, at the end of the day, this poor girl did get, raped.
And they treat her character throughout the movie kind of poorly for no reason. It feels like, other than the fact that she says a great line where she's like, "What did I ever do to you except for like you?"
Yeah.
Like that. It seems like all this bad stuff happens because she's infatuated with Tony. And
so Tony asks her, "Are you a nice girl or are you a
unpleasant word that we can't use?"
Unpleasant girl. And she's like, "I'm both." And he's like, "You can't be both. You gotta pick." The thing is, she tries to be nice, and she wants to be nice, but the rejection that she gets and the treatment that she gets makes her unpleasant, because she feels like she's second to them.
Yeah.
Where she's like, I want to be nice, but I want to be treated nice. But she's not treated nice, and I think that's where her resentment comes from, and where her bad decisions come from. But she's still the victim in this scene.
And it's unfortunate,
I hate it. I really hate it.
I think that's why the ending doesn't feel as satisfying, because, if you either could have Tony go off on his own and not reconcile with Stephanie, I think that would be okay.
Yeah, like if you're gonna do this scene where he tries to assault a girl and then he immediately is like, damn, I shouldn't have done that. That's fine. I understand that he would have immediately realized that he doesn't want to do it and he shouldn't have done it. But I don't think him going at her and they're like, let's be buddies, best buddies now. I don't think that's a good ending at all.
No, I agree. Or the other ending is what you said before, where he wants to get out, but then he's always coming back to his life. I think that would be kind of a good ending,
that's the appropriate ending to the tale we're telling here. If we're making a poignant story about the working class never being able to leave because nothing is handed to them.
Yeah, it's just kind of the culture.
Then let's end it like that. Let's not give him an happy ending. And it's not because he tried to assault her that he doesn't deserve an happy ending. You'd be more poignant at that. I would like it to be a sad ending.
Yeah, and especially because like all the stuff that happens too is like one of the members of his crew, Bobby, really going through some stuff, and
that character.
He gets his girlfriend pregnant, and he wants to have the Pope forgive him, or give him a pass to have an abortion, which is not going to happen for him.
I like that character. I like that it's a real struggle that I think kids would go through then.
Yeah,
where they love their girlfriend, they made the mistake of getting her pregnant. Now they want to get rid of the baby, but that's not how they were raised.
Yeah, and then also, he's kind of seen as the coward of the group because he never gets involved with any of their antics, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he does, and he still, participates in...
Yeah, but he drives away from the fight.
Yeah, he's the driver. He doesn't actually get beat up or anything. He doesn't participate in the kind of dangerous, risky moves that they participate in
until
near the bridge. Yeah, until the end. And that's what ends up getting him killed, Which
is also pointless to me. It's not pointless that he changes. I think it makes sense. It's been building up to him, like, realizing that the society that he lives in and the culture that he's in is not what he wants.
Yeah.
But it doesn't... I don't like that he dies. Or falls down to the bridge.
Yeah, he does die.
Yeah.
And I think
he could die. Like, my problem is not him dying. My problem is he dying doing the silly things that his friends are doing and he falls down the bridge.
Well, I think that it's more of a plot device for Tony to leave because,
he saw, like, what it gets them and what he could get from sticking around.
And I think that that's why I don't necessarily like all of the scenes, because it's like you have the rape of Annette and then you have the death of Bobby that happen one after the other, and I think it's just like a dog pile on stuff that he doesn't want.
The movie gets really boring to me down the middle.
Yeah,
I agree. It really drags to me. It's way too long. It doesn't need to be 2 hours. And then at the end, it's just attempted rape, actual rape, death, and then he goes to Annette and they're... Not Annette, sorry.
Stephanie.
He goes to Stephanie and they're...
quasi-friends?
I guess. And it's just too much at once that seems to be just dogpiling, as you said.
Yeah. I think it is just kind of like a dogpile, and it's like you could pick one of those things. I think that the death of Bobby would be more poignant than anything else, and I think you could have just kept that, and it would have been more... This would have been more of a timeless story instead of a product of its time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely think the way he died is for Tony and not for him, and I like that character because I understand where their character's coming from, where he thinks he's screwed, but there's no way out for him in the way that he was raised. Catholic.
Yeah.
Right? He can't get out of the situation, but he really desperately wants to. But his values aren't there for it. And I like that for his character. Mm. It sucks for him, sure, but, like, I understand it.
Yeah.
And then the way he dies, where, I want to break free and be silly like the other guys, and he dies. Feels like it's for Tony to get out, and not for him to get out. Yeah. I don't know. It gets really boring for me halfway through. The dancing is kind of secondary, which is fine. But I don't love the dancing either. I just don't love dancing movies in general. Unless they're, like, fun and funny, like Grace is. Where the dancing is still secondary to me because the music takes priority, but then the story carries it. This has great music, but the story doesn't really do anything with it. It's not a musical.
Yeah.
It just has great music. And it has... the location is New York. It's dirty 70s New York. It's really nice to look at. And it looks really gross and dirty, but that's how it was. Especially, like, in the end when he's having this, like, little montage moment where he's in the Manhattan trains.
Yeah.
And they're all graffiti and empty and kind of ominous. I like that, but I don't know. I feel like the idea of it sounds better than what the movie turns out to be. I think the mixture of the dancing as his escape from reality works better on paper than it does on screen.
Yeah, I think that they could have done like this. I think the concept is there, and I think if they had, made the story a little bit more fleshed out and they cut out some of the more unsavory scenes, then this would have been more of a classic. You know what I mean? Right.
There's a PG cut of this, which I think a lot of people grew up watching on TV, which I never watched, but there's a PG cut that cuts out most of the racism stuff, which is fine. I understand the racism stuff. I understand it's part of the culture of those kids.
Yeah.
I don't think the main characters that, like, glorifying racism, I don't get that from it. So, but that gets cut out. The rape scenes definitely do get cut out.
Yeah.
And it's just more about the dancing, but that's also more boring. Because the movie itself is not really about the dancing. The dancing is
secondary.
It's Tony's
an
escape.
Yeah.
It's what he looks for all week. So you get the bad things in his life, and then you reach Saturday night, which is a big deal for him.
It's like a reset for him.
Yeah.
But I gave this a 6 out of 10. I think it's okay. It does get pretty boring. And like I said, if they had approached this a little bit differently, I think it definitely could be higher up for me. And I know that this movie is pretty divisive from, at least on Letterboxd, where people either really love it and make excuses for it, I guess. But other people like viscerally hate it because of its problems. And I'm like, I do get it, kind of, but I usually hate this sentence, but I think it is just a product of its time.
It is a product of its time. I give it a 5. Between a 5 and a 6 for me. I don't hate it at all. I think there's a lot of good things from, filmmaking perspective and from a storytelling perspective, but they just don't mesh well together.
Yeah.
I understand that the dance is an escapism for him, but it's not for me as a viewer. So I really don't need long, drawn out dance scenes. And I feel like the cheery Bee Gees songs kind of just drag out. Even though they're good songs and they're good on their own, they feel like they drag out. Where I like the grittiness of it more. And I like that he has an escape, and I like everything that builds up to it. But then in the actual club, it just kind of gets boring to me.
I think it's more along the lines of the juxtaposition of the cheery songs where his life kind of sucks versus like his life kind of sucking.
Yeah, but that's that's what they were trying to do, I think. But those parts, the cheerful parts, kind of drag out to me because they're my least favorite. And I don't know. There's a lot of good elements. I like his daily life, and then I understand the working class needs to escape from work, because work sucks, work is boring, no one likes to go to work, and if you like to go to work, good for you, man, you're living the life. I wish I loved going to work. It would make it a lot easier during the week for me to go to work and feel happy. But I'm on Tony's side. Work sucks and I want to party.
Right. Well, I think that's all that we have for this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a comment, give us a rating if you can on the platform that you're listening to us on, and we will see you next time.